joined now by State Senator Ken Cuccinelli II, who is the Republican nominee for this year's general election and the Office of Attorney General. Welcome to Darshan, Senator Cuccinelli.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate the chance to be here.
It's our pleasure. Thank you for being here. So you're currently a member of the Virginia Senate.
That's correct. Been there 3 terms.
And you represent the 37th District?
Yes, which is western Fairfax, basically west and south of Fairfax City.
So after 3 terms as a state senator, why run for Attorney General?
Well, for many of the reasons I ran for the state Senate. I am a strong believer in limited government, which I think helps small businesses thrive. It helps us have a healthy economy. And it has private sector firms, companies, hiring folks for work rather than government hiring folks for work. I think that's a good way to go. I'm also a strong supporter of strong families and protecting life and the Constitution. One of the interesting things about the Attorney General's office is the incredibly wide array of issues that you deal with, including participating in trying to get legislation through during the legislative session. So it's what I do in the Senate and a lot more.
What I wanted to do was to just touch base on something that you've mentioned in the past, which is your belief that the primary responsibility or first priority, if you will, of state government is to ensure the public safety.
True.
So, first of all, how did you get involved in that area?
Well, I've actually been involved in public safety in one form or another since even before I got out of law school. Back in the early 90s, I started doing juvenile justice and delinquency prevention work, including gang prevention. I was doing that with an appointment from Governor Allen and then from Governor Gilmore, and in fact headed a state commission on the subject for 2 years. Then I moved, as part of my practice of law, I began working with the mentally ill. At the same time I was doing juvenile justice work, and I've continued that work right up to the present day. So I've been doing that for over a decade, and I'm now the General Assembly expert on mental health issues, which tragically exploded onto the scene with the Virginia Tech tragedy. I was putting in bills to try and address shortcomings in our system for years before that, but sometimes it takes a really unfortunate push for the political arena to really get moving on an issue. There are a lot of other public safety issues. I mentioned trying to deter folks from entering gangs. That's something that's continued as I've entered the Senate. And while I've been in the Senate, I've been on the Courts Committee, and that is the committee that deals with all of the criminal justice issues. So I've been involved in every single criminal justice issue for the last 7 years, which is something that's a little bit different from my opponent, who has not been participating in a lot of those. But we have addressed gangs, we've addressed internet predators, we've addressed aggressively repeat drunk drivers. These are things I've been very supportive of trying to crack down on.
You just mentioned your opponent, of course, that's Democrat Steve Shannon.
Right.
I'm curious, how do you feel your vision of the role of Attorney General differs from his?
Well, certainly I have a much more limited government approach outside of the realm of law enforcement. There's no one else to do law enforcement but government. You really don't want other people doing it except to defend themselves. But outside of that role, the Attorney General has an enormous role to play in the economic realm of Virginia. And I have a much stronger record in fighting taxes. I have a much stronger record in reducing government spending. I have a much stronger record of trying to keep Virginia off the backs of business, keep government off the backs of business, so that the private sector, people who start their own mom and pop firms, can thrive and do well. And I believe very strongly in that. And those are things that I expect to continue doing in the Attorney General's office if I'm fortunate enough to win this race. But having said that, Steve and I get along quite well. We overlap 3 precincts. His House district overlaps my Senate district. We know each other well, and we just happen to disagree on a good number of issues.
In what areas do the two of you have significant differences?
Well, property rights. I've been a strong supporter of protecting individual property rights. Steve has voted against that every time. I've been a strong supporter of holding down tax increases. He's been voting for the tax increases. Protecting the Constitution. I've been a strong constitutionalist. Steve is not.